Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a screencast. Hopefully, this will be somewhat brief for you all. It's March 3rd as I record this, about 6:21 in the evening. Friday night, kind of waiting for the snow to come. It is what it is. So the first thing is probably not the most exciting thing in the world, but there are some vocabulary words that I know we have not gone over. And so I'm using the resource, which is in Module 3, Glossary of Assessment Terms from Jay and Judy, which you can find in there. A couple of the terms I didn't think were that important. I mean, they're fine. And then a number of them we've gone over, so I wasn't going to repeat it. So let me just do a couple of those or clear my throat. And let me move on. So here's the first, analytical trait scoring. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. I don't think it's possible. Oh, zoom it a little bit. Too much. Oh, well. Fit slide. Yeah, good enough. So analytical trait scoring is when you have, it's sort of like a rubric. You have certain traits for components of whatever you're assessing. The best example, frankly, is this example I'm going to give you here. It's called the right traits. And I used to use this years ago with kids and, well, teachers mostly. Ever heard of the 6 traits of writing or right traits? It's also called 6+1, I believe. And a number of people have laid claim to being the author of it. But it's actually very cool. And so I'll have to put this link in the module. But the 6 traits are ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. And so the concept is good writing has all 6 of those. That's what traits are, analytical traits, in an assessment sense. But I think this is the perfect example of that vocabulary. And aside from the vocabulary word itself, I would really encourage you to at least look at this. In the old days, I talk about a lot, we really didn't look at writing in a very systematic or comprehensive way. You know, it was mostly, well, is the grammar good? Is it long? Is it comprehensive? Does it have a lot of references? Again, we're talking older kid writing here. And I think, sometimes the primary teachers of this world, not to, lay claim to them being the best teachers or anything, but sometimes we need to learn from each other. And the thing we can learn from primary teachers is the fact that things like reading and writing is multifaceted. You're not just either good or bad. There's different parts to it. So in the case of writing, as you can see here on the screen, there's ideas, there's organization. So you got to have ideas, obviously, and you have to organize it in a good fashion. Voice is very important, right? Who you're writing this for? Is the voice you're writing this for your parents? Is it for other students? Who is it? Word choice. Do you have good adjectives and adverbs and verbs? Sentence fluency. Is there different? And I know this, from teaching some writing too, and learning a lot about writing. The different sentence lengths is one of the top things that makes writing look or feel good. All short sentences, all long sentences just don't work well. And it's funny, it used to be, conventions were always in here. Conventions would be spelling, grammar, punctuation. The 6+1, the 1, which isn't on this one, I don't believe, they just call it 6 traits of writing. The 6+1, the extra 1 was how it looks, which is kind of funny. But, maybe you could liken that to APA now, although that's more like conventions, I suppose. Anyway, so back to the vocabulary. That's an example of analytical traits. Next one is anchor. You've heard this before, I think. This is when you have an exemplar. You might have, again, a piece of writing. It could be anything that says, this is what is good. I sort of put exemplars of the AARP in one of the modules in this class. I'm not sure they were perfect or exemplars, but they're examples anyway. Exemplar is probably the top example. Exemplar is just an example. But an anchor paper, in the old days, we used to, I keep on saying that, I got to stop that. When I was teaching, we used to, and as a principal, have days where we would judge writing and, from kids, and we would do it as a group. And very often you had an anchor paper, and that was like for each trait or whatever, and that was like the main exemplar for that particular trait or area of writing. Authentic, this is just something, we know what authentic means, but it's so important for assessments as much as possible to be authentic. I always talk about the quiz that goes on the refrigerator with the 99, and that's like, whoa, great assessment. Well, maybe, maybe not. An authentic assessment is one that is an authentic project-based activity. I remember we had an authentic performance-based task when I was teaching where kids looked at the potholes on Route 43, which were some of the worst in the state. And they developed a plan to talk to the local selectmen and people like that to fix it. And I was able to assess their knowledge of the unit and how well they were able to use their own personal skills through an authentic task. So that's what that means. Constructed response. This just means that a student will come up with something that is like an essay, a report, or a presentation, something open-ended as opposed to multiple choice. So constructed response is something a student actually constructs. They put together themselves. I don't want to give value to these necessarily. They're just different. A constructed response is great. Multiple choice can be fine too if you're, again, looking for something very specific. Criterion referenced. This is the type of assessment that judges a student based on a specific criteria. We do that most of the time, but not all the time. Most formative assessments probably aren't criterion referenced. You're just kind of seeing how they're doing. You're judging, and you may have some criteria certainly in your head, but maybe not a criteria you've let the students know about. So the ultimate, and we'll talk about large-scale assessments coming up after the next class, like state assessments and NWEA and those sort of things. But a criterion reference could be like a state assessment where there's certain standards, certain criteria, and you're being assessed based on those criteria. Dispositions, this is more in the areas of motivation, resilience, self-concept, flexibility, persistence. I'm going to give you an example that I think is a really good one. You may have heard of habits of mind. At some point, we realized in our field that it wasn't just about the ABCs, reading, writing, and math. It's also about all those, it's sometimes called soft skills. And so a woman named Benna Kalick came up with this concept of habits of mind, and there are many. I won't go over all of them. Again, I'll put this link in. I do so many podcasts. I was going to say in the show notes, in the modules. For instance, one habit of mine is being creative or imaginative or innovative. Listening with understanding and empathy almost sounds like one of the 6 facets. Questioning, gathering data through all the senses, smell, taste, and so on. Applying past knowledge in new situations, being persistent, thinking flexibly, metacognition, that's a big one. Finding humor, you may not think of that as something to assess, but it really is. Clarity and precision in the way you communicate. Taking responsible risks, how's that for a good one? It's not just about taking, crazy risks, jumping off a cliff, but, Vygotsky's work, finding your zone of proximal development. I should be talking about Vygotsky at some point too, but that's a good risk. Just moving the next step. What is the next, small responsible risk you want to take? Striving for accuracy, very important in certain fields, obviously, most fields, and so on. I'm going to let you look at this on your own, but those are called the habits of mind, and so those are like dispositions. Holistic scoring. This is the type of scoring that gives, it's kind of traditional actually, it gives one score, period. It doesn't give like a rubric sort of score, which we would do in college, or I'll do for your papers, or we would do in a lot of elementary, middle, and high school, K-12 sort of tasks. But holistic is just, sometimes compared to an anchor paper, it's just one score. It's a traditional thing. I'm getting an A in this course. I'm getting a B+ on this paper. That's holistic, sort of meaning one. Norm referenced as opposed to criterion reference. This is sort of, in this case, describing a student's performance by comparison to other similar students. So as opposed to I'm being judged by this criteria that everybody has, norm referenced is comparing or assessing based on other kids. When NWEA is a norm reference test, they reference all of the students that take NWEA throughout the world. They put it all in one big pile through great databases and computers, and they figure out what's the sort of average score. What does a 12th grader look like? What does a ninth grader look like? What does a first grader look like when they're taking NWEA or STAR? And that is more of a norm reference test. What's the norm? It's not good or bad. It's just one way of assessing students, as opposed to criterion, which is more like the state assessment, where you've got, supposedly, right, state competencies and state standards. Try to take that same sort of information and apply it to your own classroom. You probably do some norm reference things. If you give dibbles, I think there's probably some norms associated with that, where the average first grader would score this. That's norm referenced. Okay. Performance assessment, I kind of already talked about that. That's a type of assessment where kids have to perform something. They have to demonstrate something. It's not just writing a constructed response. It's actually doing something. I used the example in class I think I did anyway, of someone throwing a free throw, shooting a field goal in basketball. If you want to judge how well a person throws a football, a baseball, runs over a hurdle, it's got to be a performance assessment. Art, music tends to be performance assessments, for instance. And then I think I've just got one more. Selected response, that would be multiple choice, matching, true, false. Those are those type of assessments. Probably should have done this less in alphabetical order and more combining like terms. So that's something you may want to do. This full list is on Module 3. All right, we're going to switch gears big time. I'm going to do a very quick Jamboard review for you. So again, go to your Google page, click here, click on Jamboard. I'll do a new one. I'll have to move my picture here. Click this. You get a new Jamboard at some point. There we go. And then you have, an open slate. So again, this is the pen mark. I actually have to click on something here. All right. This is the eraser. And why isn't this working? I don't know. Oh, I have to do that. I have to drag it. So you can't just go over it. I'm actually clicking the mouse and doing this. The select tool we'll talk about in a second. Sticky note. This is tons of fun. That's a sticky note. One thing I didn't mention is you can also, of course, change the color and do a new one. You ever notice you can't type as well when you know someone's watching? All right, those are sticky notes, obviously. Get rid of that. Got enough there. You can get an image. You can actually see how powerful Google Image is. So now I got a football as soon as it loads. This is the object maker. When you're talking a square or whatever. Why aren't you working? There you go. Okay. This is the text. Once you click on that, you got to double click in a field and then it's really kind of funky. You got to kind of click there, double text. And then, of course, the laser pointer here. So you got this down, right? You also can do different pages if you want page 1, page 2, and so on. It's not what they call an infinite canvas. An infinite canvas would mean that you just keep on scrolling down. Apple just came up. It's actually on your iPhone if you have the latest update. They have a program called Freeform, and it is an infinite canvas. So you can just keep on getting as long as you want. And it's very similar to Jamboard. I'm not sure how well the collaborative features are quite yet. Of course, you can set the background here. We talked about that. And you can also clear it all. Okay, that's Jamboard. Real quick, let's go to if you're going to be collecting any quantitative data, there's some really simple ways of averaging, of giving sums and getting high and low. So I'll do Excel as well as Sheets. So if you look at Excel, I got to move this over here. I just put in some random numbers. So if you want to, let's see here, I may have to move this up. There we go. Okay. If you have a row of numbers, let's say you're doing some sort of survey or whatever, and you have a bunch of numbers, Excel now, as soon as you drag over, look at down here. I just dragged over three numbers there. They gave me an average of those three numbers, how many there were, three numbers, and then the sum. That's without doing anything but just dragging. So I can do the whole thing or any number of them. I can also do this and go to formulas and go to this delta number here. I think it's delta. And I can get an average. Okay, the average was put down there. I can get a max, which is 98. I can get a minimum, which was 5. So that's Excel. If you go to Sheets, which is the Google version of that, it's actually the same numbers. Let's see, I'll get rid of this. Actually, I don't want to get rid of that, I think. Yeah. So if I do the same sort of thing, it does give me some down here. You have to click the caret though. There's the sum and there's all the other numbers too. I also go to the same symbol here and it'll give me, average, sum, and that sort of thing. It actually places a formula in there. So you see the formula, just hit return and the formula will be in there from now on. Okay, that's a little bit of that. I think the next thing on my little list here is Google Form and SurveyMonkey. So just real quick, let's go to Google again. If you want to do a Google Form, which is like a Google survey, they just don't call it survey. You got to find it. Come on, Carosa, where are you? I probably went by it. Chat, contacts, calendar. You're probably seeing it, and I'm not, and you're yelling at me. Here it is. No, you don't do Sheets. I did Sheets. Here it is, Forms. So what you do here is if you want to do a form, and I got a ton of ones here. There's one I did for the Center for School Climate and Learning. We're doing a conference on March 21. And so what you do, I can't play with this because people are still responding here. You can have a spot up here, which is just description and that sort of thing. And then you have your questions. And so to do a new one, you just go to, say, blank, and you can call this survey. Oh, come on, Carosa. There we go. And then you can describe it. This is a survey. And you have your usual boldface, italics, and that sort of thing. And then it'll give you just a random question here, but you can change the question by hitting a plus. So let's say you want a checkbox, a paragraph, and this is going to be the answers. Multiple choice, paragraph, short answers, checkbox, and even a drop-down menu they can click on. You have all these different options. Just keep hitting plus, and the nice thing is once you click in the field, you can modify it, and you can also move them up and down just by clicking on that and dragging. Then when you're done with all your questions, hit send, and then you have some options. You can create a link. You can actually shorten it too. Then copy it, and then email the link out to whoever you want to do the test. You can also embed it into a web page. My guess is you're not doing that. And then you can email it to people directly from this form as well. One thing to be really careful about, go to the three buttons here, the three dots, and make sure you go to, no, that's not what you want. Okay, Carosa, what is it? It's not theme, it's not preview, although you can do that. You got to make sure it's shared with whoever you want to be shared with. That's it. No, that's account. What am I having problems with here? Oh, here we go. Settings. Okay. Yeah, and then you have some options here. You can manage how things are responded. So make sure you click on settings just to make sure everything there is what you want it to be. Okay. All right. So that's some of the techie stuff. And call or email me if you have any issues with that whatsoever. All right. Last thing is just some homework. It's not quite all done yet, although by the time I put this up, it'll probably be done. Chapters 3 and 4 in your 2 books. We'll still be covering the 3rd book probably in April. a discussion post with that. Finish drafts 3 and 4. The first draft doesn't have to be perfect of the AARP handed in to me via Canvas, just so I have it. I make sure you're on the right track, and I'll do any feedback you would like. Earlier is fine if you have it done earlier. And I think I said I didn't write it down here, but we'll write it down. So that's March 15th. Keep the digital portfolio going and let me know how I can help. That's it. 20 minutes, better than last time. Talk to you soon, y'all, and let me know if I can help you in any way. Have a great, weekend and week. I'll see you on the 15th live. Take care. Bye.